They called me useless in front of 20 relatives while I stood there holding a grocery store pasta salad until my sister's boss pulled into the driveway, stepped out of his Tesla, and asked, "Why is the CEO here?" If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or quietly endured years of family judgment, this story is your proof that success doesn't need permission. Just wait until you hear what happened next. The call came at 11:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. Claire was folding laundry when her phone buzzed on the counter, an unfamiliar number. She almost didn't answer. "Mrs. Evans." The voice was clipped official. Her heart dropped. "This is Dr. Harmon at Cedarview General. I'm so sorry, but your husband Ethan, he collapsed during a meeting. We did everything we could." Claire didn't hear the rest. The world slowed to static. The pile of laundry blurred her knees, buckled, and the phone slid from her hand to the hardwood floor with a dull thud. Ethan was gone. Just like that. No warning. No goodbye. An hour later, Claire sat numbly on the edge of the bed. They shared the pillow on his side, still holding the faint warmth of that morning. Lily, their 7-year-old daughter, was at school, blissfully unaware. Claire knew she had to make a call, though every part of her screamed not to. She dialed her parents. Her mother picked up on the third ring. Background noise, music, clinking glasses, laughter. Mom Claire's voice cracked before she could say more. "Oh, hi, honey. Can I call you back later? We're in the middle of Madison's birthday lunch. It's her big 3-0, Mom." Claire swallowed, forcing the words out. "Ethan died. This morning. At work." Silence. But not the kind born from shock or concern. It was the kind that calculated. Then, "Oh no, that's... wow. But sweetheart, can we talk tomorrow? We just lit the cake." Madison would be so upset if we interrupted. The line went dead a second later. Claire didn't even realize she'd dropped the phone until it hit the mattress beside her. She stared at it, unable to move. That evening, Claire stood at the threshold of Lily's bedroom. Her daughter sat cross-legged on the floor, crayon in hand, coloring the edges of a sun she'd drawn in bright orange. There was something cruel about the innocence of that sun, how it refused to dim in a world that had just caved in. Mom Lily looked up, frowning. "Why do you look sad?" Claire knelt down. The words she practiced didn't come out. Instead, she pulled Lily into her arms, holding her tighter than ever before. "Something happened, sweetheart," Claire whispered, her voice breaking. "Daddy's not coming home." The crayon dropped to the floor. Lily didn't cry right away. She just stared at her mother's chest, her cheek pressed against Claire's heartbeat, like she was trying to find Ethan's through her. Then slowly, she said the smallest thing in the softest voice. "Why didn't Grandpa and Grandma come?" Claire closed her eyes. The house was silent that night. Too silent. The kind of quiet that screamed. No doorbell, no phone calls, no casseroles on the porch, no concerned visits from the people who shared her blood. Instead, the only sound was Lily's breathing as she curled beside her mother in the queen-sized bed. Claire stared at the ceiling, the moonlight stretching across the walls in long, sharp slants. She thought about how many times Ethan had gone out of his way for her parents, fixing the gutters, shoveling snow, helping with their taxes. How he called her dad Sir, long after it was necessary. How he insisted they visit every Christmas, even when Claire knew she was barely tolerated. And now he was gone. And her parents' absence felt louder than any scream she could have made. They chose balloons over condolences, cake over grief, Madison's birthday over their own daughter's heartbreak. Claire didn't cry that night. Not really. Something deeper than sadness had taken root. Something colder. A kind of knowing that once it arrives, never really leaves. The next morning, Lily padded into the kitchen, eyes red-rimmed but dry. She held her drawing, the one with the sun. It now had a stick figure next to it, with a big smile labeled Daddy. "Can we mail this to heaven?" she asked. Claire almost broke. She knelt down and kissed Lily's forehead. "We can try." That day she bought a small helium balloon and tied the drawing to its string. They walked to the park near their house. Claire lifted Lily so she could release it into the wind. They both watched in silence as the balloon rose higher and higher, carrying with it the last bright crayon-colored memory of a father who had loved them fiercely. Claire wanted someone, anyone, to see that moment, to say I'm sorry, to say you're not alone. But the only witness was the sky. That's when it truly hit her. Grief wasn't just about who you lost. It was about who didn't show up after. Her grief had arrived, yes. But so had something else. Clarity. The people who didn't come when it mattered most, maybe they were never really there to begin with. Claire stood at the kitchen sink, her hands submerged in cold water, though the dishes were already clean. The sunlight outside danced across the floor, yet the house remained dim, heavy with silence. It had been 2 days since Ethan passed. 2 days since her world split clean in two. And still her parents hadn't come. There had been no knock on the door, no message, no flowers, not even a cold, clipped voicemail. Instead, it was her neighbor, sweet Mrs. Langford, who had shown up with a casserole wrapped in foil and quiet sympathy. "You don't have to eat it," the woman had said gently. "Just know I'm here." Claire had nodded. She hadn't the strength to cry. She didn't tell her that Ethan never liked casseroles. The memory of the phone call still rang in her ears. Her voice, cracked and trembling, barely made it through as she told her mother Ethan's gone. It was a heart attack. He died in the middle of a meeting. There had been a pause, a silence so sharp it felt like glass underfoot. Then her mother's voice. "Claire, today is Madison's birthday. Can we talk tomorrow?" That was it. No gasp. No, "Oh my God." No, "Are you okay?" No rush to be by her side. Just a dismissal. As if her grief had been an inconvenience. As if Madison's candlelit celebration somehow carried more weight than Claire's shattered world. She'd hung up without replying. Claire had spent the next hours pacing the hallway like a ghost, her hand brushing the walls for balance, like the house itself had turned unfamiliar. And Lily, sweet Lily, had followed her mother in silence until the two of them collapsed on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms. Now Claire looked over her shoulder to where Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by colored pencils. She was drawing Ethan. Again. This time he had angel wings. "Do you think Grandpa and Grandma are lost?" Lily asked suddenly. Claire froze. Lily's eyes stayed on the page, her voice soft, puzzled. "It's been 3 days. Why aren't they here?" Claire swallowed hard. "No, baby. They're not lost. Then why didn't they come say goodbye to Dad?" The question cut clean through her. How could she explain that sometimes absence wasn't forgetfulness, that it could be a choice, cold, calculated, and cruel? She sat beside her daughter, brushing back a strand of hair from her cheek. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said gently. "Some people don't know how to show up when it matters." But deep inside, Claire did know. She had known for years. The truth had been etched into her childhood. Madison, the golden child, always praised, always forgiven, always adored. Straight A's, piano recitals, beauty pageants. Madison got the extra slice of cake, the private tutoring, the gentle tone. Claire. Claire was the quiet one, the one who didn't ask for much. The one whose soccer games were forgotten, whose art wasn't hung on the fridge. She was the afterthought. Even now, the dynamic hadn't shifted. The family group chat had buzzed with photos from Madison's birthday brunch, mimosas, laughing faces, new handbags, Madison beaming in her designer dress. Claire hadn't replied. No one noticed. The truth was, grief doesn't just reveal loss, it reveals hierarchy. It shows who rushes to your side and who doesn't bother looking back. And in that silence, all the little hurts of childhood returned, like whispers in an empty room. The scraped knees that went unnoticed. The report cards no one read. The nights she cried alone after arguments, only to be told she was too sensitive. The Christmas when Madison got a new phone and Claire got a scarf. Claire realized something sitting there beside Lily all those years. She hadn't exaggerated the distance. She'd minimized it. She'd made excuses for them, convinced herself they meant well, that maybe she was imagining it. But now there was no mistaking it. Ethan's death didn't change their pattern, it revealed it in its rawest form. They weren't coming, not because they forgot, but because they had already decided whose pain mattered more. Claire felt her throat tighten, but she didn't cry. Not in front of Lily. Instead, she placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "You know what Dad used to say?" she asked. "He said family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up." Lily looked up. "We showed up for each other." Claire smiled. It was small, but real. "Yes, baby. We did." Outside, the sun moved slowly across the sky. Inside, in the quiet absence left by those who were supposed to love her most, Claire began to feel something unexpected. Not rage, clarity. She was done shrinking to fit their silence. The chapel was quiet, eerily so. Not the peaceful silence of reverence, but the kind that made Claire's skin crawl. A silence filled with the echo of what was missing. Ethan's funeral should have been packed. He was kind. He was generous. He was the man who offered to fix a neighbor's broken fence without asking for thanks. The man who stayed late to help his team meet deadlines, who remembered birthdays and asked about your kids by name. And yet the pews remained mostly empty. A few co-workers had come sitting in the middle row, fidgeting with programs and wearing guilt in their eyes. Mrs. Langford sat in the front, hands folded tightly in her lap. Ethan's old basketball coach, now slowed by a cane, arrived just before the service began and patted Claire's shoulder with a tenderness that made her want to break. But her parents, Madison. They were late. Claire sat in the front with Lily, the small girl nestled close to her side, clutching a single white rose. Her black dress was slightly too big. It had belonged to a friend's daughter, loaned at the last minute. Claire hadn't had the heart to go shopping. 15 minutes into the service, just as the minister began the second hymn, the chapel doors creaked open. Her parents stepped in first, her mother's heels clacking against the floor like they were entering a gallery instead of a funeral. Madison followed behind, her phone in her hand, thumbs moving rapidly across the screen. Claire didn't turn to look at them directly. She didn't need to. She could feel their presence like a draft through a closed window, cold and out of place. They didn't cry. Not a tear. Madison's eyes stayed glued to her phone. Her parents wore the expressions of people attending a social obligation. Not grief, not love, just inconvenience. Claire gripped Lily's hand tighter. A few minutes later, the doors opened again, and this time, someone ran. "Noah," Claire whispered. Ethan's younger brother hurried down the aisle, his hair slightly disheveled from the long flight. He had flown in from Japan overnight, landing just an hour before. He looked exhausted, but when he spotted Claire and Lily, his entire face softened. He bent down, scooped Lily into his arms, and slid into the seat beside them. Lily rested her head against his chest, like she'd done with Ethan. Claire blinked rapidly. She hadn't realized how tightly she'd been holding it all in until the moment someone really showed up. When the time came for her to speak, Claire rose slowly. The chapel seemed to blur around the edges. She stood behind the podium, hand trembling slightly as she unfolded the note she'd written the night before. Ethan believed in people, she began. He believed in showing up even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He believed family meant more than blood, it meant presence. It meant sacrifice. It meant putting others before yourself. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the back. Madison had her AirPods in. Her mother was scrolling through the program. Her father was checking his watch. Claire's voice cracked. He always put family first. Just then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw her parents rise quietly from their seats. They began to collect the gift envelopes left near the condolence table, without a word, without acknowledgement. Her mother slipped them into her handbag like it was just another errand to check off. Claire's words faltered. Her heart felt exposed raw, as if her grief had been magnified under a spotlight. Noah placed a steadying hand on her back. She looked down at her daughter and found Lily looking up at her, wide-eyed but brave. "I'll always remember how Ethan made us feel," seeing Claire said. "And that's what I want for Lily to know. She is never invisible, that she is loved, and that love shows up." She returned to her seat, her legs like glass, but she held her head high. After the service, Claire and Noah stood outside greeting the few who had come. The sun had started to lower in the sky, casting a golden hue across the gravestones nearby. Her parents didn't wait. They didn't say goodbye. They disappeared as quickly as they had arrived, car trunk full of sympathy cards and no sign of sympathy on their faces. Madison posted an Instagram story from the parking lot, "Family days are the hardest," overlaid on a filtered shot of her coffee cup. Claire didn't say anything. She didn't scream. She didn't confront them. She simply watched them drive away and felt lighter. For the first time, she could see it clearly. Blood did not make them family. Noah's arm came around her shoulder. "He would have been proud of you," he said. Claire looked down at Lily, who was now holding Ethan's framed photo close to her chest. "Then I'll keep living in a way that proves him right." The doorbell rang 2 days after the funeral. Claire had just managed to get Lily settled on the couch with a coloring book when the chime echoed through the quiet house. She hesitated. No one dropped by unannounced anymore. Her neighbors had brought casseroles the first few days. The rest of the world had moved on. She opened the door to find her parents standing there, a bouquet of slightly wilted lilies in her mother's hand and a tight smile on her father's lips. "Hi, sweetheart," her mother said. "We thought we'd check in. How are you holding up?" It was the tone Claire recognized too well, gentle, practiced, impersonal. The kind of tone used with acquaintances at church, not your daughter, who had just buried her husband. "I'm managing," she said, stepping aside to let them in. They walked into the living room, surveying it as if it were an open house. Her mother placed the flowers on the table. Her father glanced around, but didn't ask about Lily. They sat on the edge of the couch. Claire stayed standing. There was a pause, one of those awkward silences where everyone pretends to search for the right words, but in truth, they're just waiting for their turn to speak. Her mother broke it first. "We were just talking about finances, the insurance payout." Ethan was smart to have planned ahead. Claire felt a flicker of something tighten in her chest. Her father cleared his throat. "We know this must be a difficult time. And of course, you have Lily to think about. So much responsibility for one person. And we were thinking," her mother interjected, "that it might be most fair if the funds were shared." Claire blinked. "Shared?" "Yes, shared," her father said more firmly. "I mean, Ethan was family. And we did help raise him. It feels right to receive a portion. Half, perhaps, and maybe a smaller share for Madison as well. 15% would be reasonable." Claire just stood there. It was like watching a familiar nightmare play out. Their expressions so calm, so entitled. Like this was a transaction, a logical redistribution. Like Ethan's death had turned her grief into an estate sale. Behind her, the soft creak of floorboards. Lily. Claire turned slightly to see her daughter standing in the hallway, just out of sight from her grandparents. Small fingers clutching the edge of the wall, big listening eyes. Claire's voice was quiet when she replied, "You think you deserve half?" Her father nodded. "It's only fair." "Fair," Claire repeated, tasting the word like it had turned bitter. Madison could really use the help. "You know," her mother added, "she's been very stressed lately." Claire almost laughed. Madison had been stressed for years. Stress was her currency. Lily tiptoed closer, curling into the armchair in the corner, still silent. Claire straightened. "I think this conversation is over." Her mother's smile faltered. "We're not trying to fight Claire. We just assumed Ethan would have wanted, you assumed wrong." There was a shift in the air, a quiet storm brewing just beneath the surface. But Claire held it together, if only for Lily. Her parents stood. No apology, no emotion. Just a quiet exchange of glances and a muttered, "We'll talk later." As the door clicked shut behind them, Claire exhaled. Her hands were shaking. She turned toward Lily, who hadn't moved. "Sweetheart," she said softly. Lily looked up. Her voice, when it came, was small, but steady. "Mom, did they come here for Daddy's money?" Claire swallowed. The air seemed to thicken. "I heard them say something about sharing it, but they didn't even ask how you were." Claire knelt in front of her. "You shouldn't have had to hear that, but I did. And then they didn't love Daddy like we did. Right? Claire didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took Lily's hand and held it tight. No, baby, she whispered. Not the way we did. Because how do you explain to a child that sometimes the people meant to love you the most show up only when there's something to gain? That grief brings out not just sorrow, but entitlement. That even death can't melt the ice in some hearts. Lily leaned into her, pressing her face against Claire's shoulder. I wish Uncle Noah lived here, she mumbled. He brings hugs, not questions. Claire nodded, brushing her fingers through Lily's hair. Me too. In that moment, she realized something powerful Lily saw more than adults gave her credit for. Children might not understand the logistics of money or the legalities of inheritance, but they understood tone, motive, who was present and who wasn't. They sensed truth. And now Claire knew her next steps wouldn't just be about protecting Ethan's legacy. It would be about protecting Lily's future from the cold, from the takers, from anyone who thought love was something that could be claimed like property. There would be no more pretending. The door clicked shut behind Claire as she stepped into the office of Ryan Caldwell, her attorney. The air was crisp, professional framed degrees on the wall, a muted hum of distant traffic. She hadn't wanted to be here, but she knew she needed to be. Ryan looked up from his papers and gave a gentle nod. Claire, I reviewed everything. The life insurance, the house, the savings accounts, all in your and Ethan's names. Legally, they don't have a claim. Claire's fingers trembled as she gripped the armrests of her chair. Not even if they try to contest it? He shook his head. There's no legal standing. Ethan made sure of it. You're protected. Lily is protected. Protected. She let the words settle like a blanket over her grief. In the silence that followed, Ryan slid a sealed envelope across the desk. Ethan left this with me 6 months ago. Asked me to give it to you. If anything ever happened. Her breath caught. She stared at the envelope as if it might vanish. Carefully, she broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, Ethan's neat, deliberate handwriting that made her chest ache. Claire, if you're reading this, something went wrong, and I'm so sorry. I didn't want to leave you and Lily like this. A few months ago, your father came to me asking for a large loan. I said no. It wasn't because I didn't care, but because I saw what they were capable of, and I wasn't willing to jeopardize our future for their patterns. Claire, protect Lily. Protect what we've built. Don't let them take a piece of her childhood like they took yours. With all my love, Ethan. Her throat burned as she folded the letter and held it to her chest. Ethan knew. He had always known. Not just about the numbers and the paperwork, but the quiet threats families make with smiles on their faces. And he had planned. Quietly. Strategically. That evening back home, Claire found Lily hunched over the kitchen table with construction paper glue and scissors. A small, determined tongue peeked out between her lips as she concentrated. What are you working on, sweetheart? Claire asked, trying to sound calm. Lily looked up wide-eyed. It's a gift for Grandma and Grandpa. Claire's body stiffened. Oh, it's a box of things they forgot to give, Lily said matter-of-factly. She held up a handmade card, drawn with uneven block letters. Things I didn't get from you. A hug when Mommy cried $0. A visit when Daddy died, $0. Asking if I'm okay, $0. Being real grandparents, priceless. But not everyone gets that. Claire sat down slowly, the weight of it all making her feel like she had aged a decade in a day. Why did you make this Lily? The girl shrugged. They said they loved Daddy, but they never came. Maybe they forgot. Claire blinked hard, swallowing back tears. Sometimes grown-ups forget the things that matter most. Lily nodded. That's why I'm helping them remember. Claire didn't tell her to stop. She didn't correct or soften or explain. She just watched her daughter quietly prepare a truth more powerful than any courtroom speech. The next day, she placed Ethan's letter in a fireproof safe, and in her planner, she scribbled a note. Prepare the will. Strengthen the trust. Keep the line drawn. She wasn't going to argue. She was going to protect, not by shouting, but by planning. And that was louder than anything she could ever say. They called it a family meeting. Claire knew better. She could feel it in the way her mother had texted her formally, like a business memo. We'd like to speak in person about future arrangements. Please have Lily stay in another room." They arrived precisely at 3. Madison wore a blazer too sharp for a casual visit. Her mother's perfume arrived before she did. Her father carried a leather folder tucked under his arm, the kind that usually held contracts or conditions. Claire stood in the doorway, calm, composed already, bracing for the storm. "Thank you for having us," her mother said with a thin smile. Claire gestured to the living room. "Let's sit." Once they were settled, her father wasted no time. "We've spoken to a financial advisor. Given Ethan's passing and our role in the family, it would be fair for the insurance money to be divided. 50% to you and Lily, 35% to us, and 15% to Madison. We think Ethan would have wanted that." Claire didn't flinch. "Lily stays." Her mother raised a brow. "This isn't appropriate for a child." Claire met her gaze steady. "If it's not appropriate for her to hear, then it's not appropriate for you to say. She's not leaving." Lily, seated quietly beside her mother, clutched a small envelope in her hand. Madison rolled her eyes. "This is really unnecessary." Claire turned to Lily. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Lily nodded and stood her feet barely brushing the floor as she spoke. "I made something," she said softly. Her voice didn't tremble. She was too young to know she should be nervous. "It's a bill." "A bill?" Madison asked, scoffing. Lily opened her envelope and began reading from the crayon-covered sheet. "Hugging Mommy when she cried $0, not provided. Asking me if I was okay after Daddy died, $0, not provided. Coming to the funeral. Late, no flowers, no hugs, no love. Being real grandparents, priceless. But never delivered. No one spoke. Not a shuffle. Not a sigh. The room was stone silent." Lily handed the paper to her grandfather, who stared at it like it was a foreign language. Claire placed a hand gently on her daughter's back. "Thank you, baby." Her voice was quiet but firm when she turned back to the room. She just listed the truth. Madison's jaw was clenched. "She doesn't understand how things work. She understands exactly enough." Claire said, her voice steady but edged. "She understands that love isn't a transaction. That showing up matters more than percentages. That silence is noticed especially by the people who deserve to be comforted." Her mother finally spoke, her voice brittle. "You're twisting this. We were trying to be respectful." "No," Claire interrupted. "You were being absent, just like always. And now that there's money, suddenly there's time." The folder her father brought remained unopened. There would be no negotiation today, no legal strategy. Just a child's voice ringing truer than any adult in the room. They left soon after, quietly. No raised voices, no slamming doors, just shame that hung in the air, heavier than any argument. That evening, Claire tucked Lily into bed. The little girl smiled sleepily. "Did I do okay?" she asked. Claire kissed her forehead. "You did perfectly." Outside the room, the envelope Lily had made sat alone on the coffee table. A bill no one would ever pay, but one that would never be forgotten. Claire didn't block their numbers out of spite. She did it for air. After the confrontation in her living room, the one where her daughter Lily had said everything adults refused to, Claire realized there was nothing left to explain. Her parents had crossed a line, and for the first time in her life, Claire wasn't going to erase it for them. The next morning, her phone buzzed. 10 missed calls, 4 voicemails. Then a text, "We are consulting a lawyer. This isn't over." Claire simply forwarded the message to Ryan, her attorney. It didn't shake her. Not anymore. By afternoon, Ryan called back. "They're bluffing," he said calmly. "Legally, they don't have a claim. All assets are in your name and Ethan's. There's no loophole. They're just angry that love isn't something you can inherit." Claire let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "Thank you." Also, he added, "Good job, Claire. Most people break before the boundary holds. You didn't." She didn't reply. But that night, when she double-checked that Lily's bedroom window was locked, she smiled quietly to herself. 2 days later, Noah arrived. His suitcase was modest. His presence was not. Noah, Ethan's younger brother, had always been quiet. A man of few words, big hugs, and deep loyalty. He had flown in for the funeral, sat with Lily the whole time, and left her with a small carved chess piece, a white queen he'd whittled by hand. Now he was back staying in the guest room Ethan used to work in. For 3 months, he said maybe more. "If that's okay?" Claire nodded. It was more than okay. It was needed. Days began to soften. The nights, while still heavy, no longer felt suffocating. Every afternoon, Noah and Lily sat by the kitchen table playing chess. Not just for the game, but for the stories in between the moves. "Your dad was always bad at defense." Noah chuckled, nudging a knight forward. "He'd charge with his queen and forget the back row." Lily giggled. "I'm gonna be better than him." Noah raised an eyebrow. "That's what he said about me." Between matches, Noah taught her how to notice silence, how to listen for what isn't said, how to trust someone's patterns, not just their words. It wasn't just about chess. It was about people, about survival. One evening, Lily asked Uncle Noah, "Is Grandma still mad?" Noah paused. "I think she's not used to being told no," he said honestly. But sometimes the best thing we can do for people we love is not let them hurt us anymore. In the quiet of those weeks, Claire realized something. Not all family wounds come from blood, and not all healing has to either. She didn't need to forgive her parents overnight. She didn't need to pretend. What she needed, what Lily needed, were people who stayed, people who showed up not for a cut of the inheritance, but for the broken pieces of her heart. And Noah, he didn't try to fix the pain. He simply helped them live through it one checkmate at a time. Claire didn't block their numbers out of spite. She did it for air. After the confrontation in the living room, the one where Lily, her 8-year-old daughter, had spoken the raw, uncomfortable truth that no adult had dared to. Claire understood something. For the first time in her life, some boundaries are meant to be built, not negotiated. Her parents had crossed that line long ago. But this time, Claire wasn't going to erase it to make them feel comfortable. The morning after that tense family meeting, Claire's phone buzzed relentlessly. 10 missed calls, 4 voicemails. Then a text. "We're consulting a lawyer. This isn't over." She didn't even open the voicemails. She just forwarded the message to Ryan, her attorney, and powered the phone off. By late afternoon, Ryan called. His voice was even and sure, the kind of calm that didn't need to shout. "They're bluffing," he said. "They have no legal footing. Every asset is clearly documented in both your and Ethan's names. There are no backdoors. There's nothing they can take." Claire exhaled slowly, the kind of breath you don't realize you've been holding until someone hands you permission to let it go. "Thank you," she whispered. Ryan paused, then added something she didn't expect. "You're doing something most people can't, Claire." You held the line. "A lot of folks get guilted into erasing it. You didn't. That's power." That night, Claire stood in Lily's room a little longer. She checked the windows, adjusted, the nightlight kissed her forehead twice. And as she turned off the light, she allowed herself the smallest of smiles. Not one of victory, but of peace. 2 mornings later, the doorbell rang. Noah was back. His suitcase was modest worn at the corners. But his presence, it filled the doorway like sunlight, steady, familiar. Ethan's younger brother had always been this way, quiet, anchored, the kind of person who could sit next to your silence and not ask it to hurry up. He had flown in from Japan for the funeral, spent the entire service with his arms wrapped around Lily, and handed her a small, hand-carved chess piece before leaving a white queen smoothed by hours of attention. He didn't explain its meaning. He didn't have to. Now he stood at the front door with a hesitant smile. "I've taken some time off," he said. "Thought I could stay for a bit, help where I can. If..." "That's okay." Claire didn't answer right away. She just opened the door wider and stepped aside. 3 days turned into 3 weeks. Noah set up in Ethan's old office, now mostly empty, except for a bookshelf and a memory that still clung to the air. Lily insisted he eat breakfast with them every morning. She'd quiz him with riddles and help fold his laundry. They made a quiet little rhythm. But what mattered most was what happened each afternoon. They played chess, always at the kitchen table. Lily would sit on her knees to see the board better, her elbows nearly knocking the pieces off. Noah never corrected her posture. But it was never just about the game. Your dad Noah said one day, nudging his rook, he was awful at defense, brilliant at attack, but always left his king wide open. Lily giggled. I'm gonna beat him. I'm already better. Noah raised a brow. That's what he said about me. Move by move. They weren't just building strategy, they were building trust. Noah taught her how to read between the lines, to understand patterns, to notice what wasn't being said. Sometimes he told her people lie with their mouths, but tell the truth with their habits. It wasn't a chess lesson. It was a survival guide. One evening, as dusk slipped through the windows and the board sat between them mid-game, Lily asked Uncle Noah, "Is Grandma still mad?" He paused. "I think she's not used to being told no," he said. "Some people think love means always getting their way. But sometimes, the kindest thing we can do is protect ourselves from people we care about." Lily didn't respond. She just stared at the queen piece between her fingers, the one he'd carved for her. Slowly, she placed it back on the board. Claire watched them from the hallway. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the sound of Noah's quiet honesty and Lily's wide-eyed silence, it moved something in her. Not all family hurts. Some family heals, and sometimes the people who show up later show up stronger. Claire didn't need her parents to apologize to move on. She didn't need their approval. What she needed, what Lily needed, was someone who stayed without needing something in return. And Noah? He didn't try to fix the grief. He just sat in it with them, gently reminding them that healing didn't always look like closure. Sometimes it just looked like someone being there long enough for the pain to breathe. And for the first time since Ethan's death, Claire didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was starting to live again, one checkmate at a time. Claire didn't say yes right away. When the message came through Ryan, of course, because she still hadn't unblocked their numbers, it simply read, "We'd like to see Lily. Just for a short visit. No tension, no talk of money. Just time." Claire stared at the screen for a long time, not out of anger, not even fear, but something quieter. Like standing at the edge of an ocean, she once nearly drowned in wondering if it was worth dipping her foot again. She sent a single reply, 15 minutes, public place, supervised. The ice cream parlor on Maple Avenue was small, cheerful, and open concept enough for Claire to see every interaction from her table by the window. Lily chose the seat booth by the bubblegum machine, her favorite. They arrived on time. For once. Her parents came in holding hands like they were rehearsing kindness. Claire watched from a distance, not for sabotage, but for safety. That was her job now, not to manage their feelings, but to protect Lily's peace. Lily's face was unreadable as they approached. "Hi, sweetheart," her grandmother said a bit too brightly. Lily gave a small nod. "I like your dress," her grandfather added. "It's got stars on it." "It has a name," Lily replied, her voice quiet. "Her name is Nova." Claire couldn't help the tug of a smile. Nova, the dress had been Lily's favorite all summer. It wasn't just fabric, it was armor. They ordered their scoops. Vanilla for Lily, strawberry swirl for her grandmother, chocolate chip for her grandfather. The same choices as every Thanksgiving. At first the conversation was stiff. Weather, school, cartoons. But then something shifted. Her grandmother asked, "Do you still sleep with that elephant?" Lily blinked. "Bobo." "Yes. You brought him once when you stayed over. He was missing an ear." Lily's shoulders softened. "He still is." They all laughed gently. And for the first time in what felt like years, Claire saw her daughter smile in their presence. Not big, not wild, but genuine. No one brought up Ethan. No one mentioned the will. No one asked about the house, the lawyer, the money. It was strange, almost human. They only had 15 minutes. Claire had set a timer. But when it rang, no one flinched. Lily simply finished her last bite of cone and looked at them both. "You can come to my birthday," she said, "if you promise to be nice." Claire inhaled sharply from the window, not at her daughter's words but the innocence in them. That open, honest hope that people can change even if they haven't. Her father swallowed hard. "We'll try our best." Lily gave a small nod and walked over to Claire, slipping her hand into hers without a word. As they turned to leave, her grandmother called out softly, "Thank you for letting us see her." Claire turned slightly, meeting her mother's eyes. She didn't speak, but she didn't turn away either. That night, Lily asked Mom, "Was that okay?" That they came. Claire thought for a long time before answering. "It's not about whether they were perfect today," she said. "It's about whether you felt okay. That's what matters." Lily nodded, then added, "I think I liked it, but I'm not sure yet." "That's all right, baby," Claire said, stroking her hair. "You don't have to be sure, you just have to be safe." She tucked Nova into the drawer, pulled the covers up, and whispered, "Forgiveness doesn't mean we forget what they did. It just means we remember who we are." Claire lay in bed that night, eyes open to the ceiling. She had made peace with not needing an apology. What she needed, what Lily deserved, was space. Space to grow, space to be soft, and maybe someday space for grace. Forgiveness wasn't a reward she handed out to the deserving. It was a gift she gave herself, so she could breathe again. Grief, Claire realized, doesn't disappear. It just stops asking for attention every minute. Some days she could make breakfast without feeling like she was betraying Ethan by still living. Some nights, she could fold Lily's laundry without remembering how Ethan used to hum as he did the same. But healing wasn't forgetting. It was remembering differently. That realization bloomed the morning she stood at the city courthouse, a pen in her hand and a foundation application in front of her. The Ethan Morrison Foundation for Financial Literacy, supporting single mothers. She signed her name at the bottom with trembling fingers. Ethan had always believed in empowering quietly. He used to say, "If you teach a mother how to negotiate a contract, you've already changed a family tree." Claire remembered the afternoons he'd spend helping friends understand interest rates or budgeting for school supplies. "Money's not evil," he'd say, "but ignorance about it is." Now she was turning his quiet passion into a legacy that had weight, real structure, real scholarships, real impact. By the end of the month, the first workshop had been scheduled, and the first sponsor confirmed. Claire wept in the parking lot after the news, not out of sadness, but something gentler. Pride, maybe, or grace. Meanwhile, Lily had taken on her own project, a scrapbook. She didn't call it a tribute or a memory book. She called it Me and Dad Things That Still Matter. It was filled with hand-drawn pictures, ticket stubs from old zoo trips, a crayon outline of Ethan's hand traced from a birthday card, and pages of things Dad said. Some were simple: never eat cereal without checking the expiration date. It's okay to not know the answer, but it's not okay to stop asking. Others were bigger. If someone makes you feel small, they're scared of how big you are. Claire found Lily asleep one night, the scrapbook open beside her tiny hands resting over a Polaroid of Ethan lifting her into the air. Both of them laughing, the kind of joy that feels like sunlight you can hold. She kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "He'd be proud of you. So proud." Noah didn't make any announcements when he took the new job. That wasn't his style. He simply mentioned over coffee one morning, "I've accepted a lecturer position. Local university, finance and behavioral economics." Claire raised her eyebrows. "Here, you're staying?" He nodded, buttering toast like it wasn't a life-changing sentence. "I think I need to do more than grieve Ethan. I need to continue him." That afternoon, Claire watched from the porch as Noah helped Lily adjust the height of the basketball hoop Ethan had installed years ago. She was still too short to make the shot, but she kept trying, and Noah kept catching the rebounds. Teaching, encouraging, not replacing, just continuing. Weeks later, as Claire walked into the community center, where the first Ethan Foundation workshop was being held, she paused in the doorway. Dozens of women, young, tired, hopeful, sat around fold-out tables, notebooks open eyes forward. A volunteer was leading a session on debt restructuring. No one here knew Ethan, but they would know what he stood for. Claire swallowed a wave of emotion and smiled. One woman turned around, baby on her lap. "Are you the founder?" Claire nodded slowly. "Yes." The woman grinned. "Thank you. I didn't think I'd qualify, but someone from your team called." Said everyone deserves a second chapter. Claire blinked. That sounds like something my husband would have said. Smart man, the woman said. He was. That night, Claire came home to find Lily in her room, showing Noah the finished scrapbook. Can I add one more thing? Lily asked. Noah looked over. Of course. What's missing? Lily carefully wrote in her neatest handwriting, Dad is not gone. He just became part of the things that help us grow. Claire stood quietly at the door, hand over her heart. They had lost so much, and still they had become more. It arrived on a Wednesday. No name on the envelope, just careful, familiar handwriting and a single stamp slightly off-center. Claire stood at the kitchen counter, fingers brushing the paper. She didn't open it right away. She didn't need to. Forgiveness wasn't a door she'd been waiting to reopen. But some doors knock whether we expect them or not. Later that night, after Lily had gone to sleep and the house was still, Claire sat by the window, opened the envelope, and read, Dear Claire, we don't know if this letter will matter. We don't know if we even deserve the chance to say it. But we're sorry. Deeply, completely, ashamedly sorry. You lost your husband, and we were absent. Worse, we were cold. There is no excuse, only a desperate belated clarity. We chose one child's birthday over another child's grief. We failed you. If you ever let us try again, not as parents who demand, but as people who ask, we'll show up better. Even if it's too late, we needed to say this. Love always. Or at least now. Mom and Dad. Claire sat still for a long while, then folded the letter slowly and placed it in a drawer. Not gone. Not discarded, but not rushed either. That Saturday morning, as sunlight spilled through the kitchen window and the smell of pancakes filled the air, Lily looked up from the table, her fork dangling midair. Mom Claire glanced over. Lily hesitated, then said quietly, Can I invite Grandma and Grandpa to my birthday party? Claire's hand paused over the stove. Lily continued, I know what they did. I'm not little Mom, but they sent the letter right, and maybe they want to try. Claire turned and sat across from her daughter. That's a big question, sweetheart. I'm not saying forgive everything. Right now, Lily said quickly, eyes wide. Just maybe let them try. Claire studied her child. So much Ethan in those eyes. The steadiness, the softness that came with boundaries. She took a breath. If they've truly changed, if they show up with love, not demands, then yes, we can give them a chance. Lily smiled. Not big, not giddy, just enough. Okay, she whispered. The birthday came 2 weeks later. Lily had requested something small, a park picnic, a strawberry cake, and a table for coloring. The invitation list was short. Noah, a few school friends, Claire's close circle, and yes, 2 names written in Lily's round handwriting at the bottom. Claire waited until the last minute to send the invitation. She didn't include a note, just a time, a place, and a reminder, no gifts, presents only. They came, late but not too late. Claire saw them walking up the hill, her father in a pressed blue shirt, her mother holding a gift bag, but leaving it in the car as requested. Their faces wore the kind of nervous hope that only comes from people who know they've broken something beyond easy repair. They didn't make speeches. They didn't cry or beg. They said, Happy birthday, Lily, and sat politely on the outer edge of the picnic blanket, waiting to be invited closer. Lily handed them a drawing she'd made herself, a family tree with some branches broken, some regrown. Her grandfather studied it silently for a long time. Then, in a voice that cracked a little, he said, Thank you. Claire watched, heart tight but steady. This wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. This was observation. This was the start of something that could be safe or not. But now it would happen on her terms, on Lily's. That night, as Claire tucked Lily into bed, her daughter whispered something that wrapped the entire journey into one small, quiet sentence. Dad always said, be kind, Lily said. But not so kind that people think it's okay to hurt you. Claire smiled softly, brushing hair from Lily's forehead. He said that Lily nodded. I added the last part. Claire walked back to the kitchen letter still in the drawer, cake crumbs on the counter, and sunlight fading into the walls of a home built on survival and slow healing. She didn't know if her parents would become family again, but she knew one thing for sure. Family wasn't where you started. It was where you were safe, heard, respected. It was who showed up with gentleness, especially when they had nothing to gain. She looked at the door where they'd once rung the bell demanding money. Now they rang it differently. And maybe, just maybe, that was the start of something worth keeping.